The Senate will come to order. Good afternoon, Senators. Good afternoon. It is so good to be here. The Senators will please take their seats. Those persons not entitled to the privileges of the floor will please retire to the gallery. The Senators will stand. We will be led in prayer by the Reverend Dr. James G. Somerville of First Baptist Church of Richmond, Virginia. After the prayer, we will please remain standing. We will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance to our great flag of the United States of America by Corinne Sloan, Assistant Journal Clerk in the Senate Clerk's office.
Shall we pray? Almighty God, we have gathered in the interest of the Commonwealth of Virginia and for the sake of the common good. Some of those in this room have been chosen by their fellow citizens to make decisions that will affect every citizen. It is a heavy responsibility. I pray that as they consider their options, they will be guided by the words of Gandhi, who said the true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members, and by the words of Jesus, who said, "Whatever you did for the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you did for me." And may the outcome of today's session reflect the consensus of the world's enduring religions, that we do unto others what we would have them do unto us. For we ask it in your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will call the roll. All those present, please vote aye. All those present, please vote aye. The clerk will close the roll.
You have a quorum, Madam President.
The clerk will now report a certain communication on the desk.
Commonwealth of Virginia Executive Department Proclamation. In accordance with the provisions of Article 4, Section 6, and Article 5, Section 5 of the Constitution of Virginia, and the powers thereby vested in the Governor to call a special session of the General Assembly, I, Glenn Youngkin, Governor of Virginia, do hereby summon the members of the Senate and the House of Delegates constituting the General Assembly of Virginia to meet in special session commencing the 4th day of April 2022 for the purpose of the completion of the 2023-2024 biennial budget, given under my hand as Governor of Virginia and under the lesser seal of the Commonwealth at Richmond the 23rd day of March 2022 and in the 246th year of the Commonwealth. Glenn Youngkin, Governor.
Senators, a reminder that the Senate is operating under the rules of the Senate, which was adopted at the commencement of the 2020 session. The chair now recognizes the senator from Hampton. Senator Locke will be giving us the purpose of taking up a resolution.
Good morning, Madam President.
Good morning.
Madam President, I move that the rules be suspended, the Committee on Rules be discharged from further consideration of the resolution, the readings of the title and engrossment be waived, and Senate Resolution 601 be taken up for immediate consideration.
The question is, shall the rules be suspended, the Committee on Rules be discharged from further consideration of the resolution, the readings of the title and engrossment be waived, and Senate Resolution 601 be taken up for immediate consideration? As many as are in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 35, noes 0.
Ayes 35, noes 0. The rules are suspended to take up the resolution for immediate consideration. The clerk will please report the resolution.
Senate Resolution 601, Special Session 1, Operating Resolution.
The chair recognizes again Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the resolution be agreed to, and speaking to that resolution.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Resolution number 601 addresses payments to cover contingent and incidental expenses and session per diem and mileage reimbursement. Again, I move that the resolution be agreed to.
The question is, shall the resolution be agreed to? As many as are in favor of agreeing will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 35, noes 0.
Ayes 35, noes 0. The resolution is agreed to. Senator Saslaw, the senior senator from Fairfax County, is ordered to inform the House of Delegates that the Senate is duly organized and ready to proceed to business. We now have a message from the House. Sergeant at Arms.
Madam President, the delegate from Scott, Delegate Kilgore.
Madam President, I've been directed by the Speaker of the House of Delegates to inform the Senate that the House has agreed to House Joint Resolution 6001, limiting legislation, providing a schedule for the conduct of business for the 2022 Special Session 1, and requests the concurrence of the Senate. Thank you.
So we can be at ease.
While we receive that message, we will continue with the morning hour. The chair recognizes the senior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise for the purpose of an introduction.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This morning, we were blessed by the prayer of Reverend Dr. James Somerville of the First Baptist Church, and I want to thank him for leading us in prayer this morning. Dr. Somerville is pastor of Richmond's First Baptist Church, a position that he's held since 2008. And he has, this church has such an important role in this community. We may recall that in February of this past year, February 2022, we had a tremendous tragedy in the Richmond city, and that was with the fire and the destruction of Fox Elementary School. Immediately after that fire, there was some question as to how the school would proceed and how the students, the teachers, and the staff of that school would be accommodated. Reverend Somerville, along with his congregation at First Baptist Church, stepped up immediately to the crisis at hand, and they very graciously and generously offered their home, the First Baptist Church, to be the house of Fox Elementary School for the remaining months of this school year. And for that, the Richmond City Public Schools are deeply indebted to the community of the church, to their graciousness, to their hospitality, and all that they have done in welcoming our students back to an in-person setting. So, Madam President, I ask that we offer the warm welcome of the Senate.
Good morning again, Reverend. Thank you for your prayer. And just to add a bit to that, it is so wonderful to hear that we live out our faith, and you're doing that. Thank you for stepping forward and helping us. It is a true testament to your qualities and the congregation that you lead. And senators, let us give him the warm welcome of his Senate. The chair recognizes the senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, may the journal reflect that the senator from Washington County and the senator from Spotsylvania are away from the Capitol on pressing personal business.
Thank you, Senator. The journal will so reflect. Chair recognizes Senator Favola, the gentlelady from Arlington.
Thank you, Madam President. I, too, have an announcement for the Journal. Let the Journal reflect that the junior senator from Richmond City, Senator Morrissey, is away on personal pressing business.
Thank you, Senator. The Journal will again so reflect. Chair recognizes the senior senator from Richmond, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to request that the Journal reflect that the senator from Williamsburg, my seatmate, Senator Mason, is away due to pressing personal business.
Thank you, Senator. The Journal will so reflect. The Senate will be at ease. The chair now recognizes the senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the rules be suspended, the Committee on Rules be discharged from further consideration of the resolution, the reading of the title be waived, and House Joint Resolution 6001 be taken up for immediate consideration.
The question is, shall the rules be suspended, the Committee on Rules be discharged from further consideration of the resolution, the readings of the title be waived, and House Joint Resolution 6001 be taken up for immediate consideration? All those in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 34, no 0.
Ayes 34, no 0. The rules are suspended to take up the resolution for immediate consideration. Chair now recognizes again the senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the resolution be agreed to.
I'm sorry, Senator. I'm told we have a floor amendment. Chair now recognizes the senator from Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Somerville.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Madam President. I'd move that we waive reading of the floor amendment.
The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? Those in favor of waiving the reading of the floor amendment will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. Senator Somerville.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd move the floor amendment and speak to the motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, basically what this floor amendment does is it strikes out Romanet number 2 under the proposed joint resolution. Romanet number 2 basically contemplates both chambers considering any bill communicated by the governor. And I've gone back and, first of all, just been looking back at history. That language was contained in the 2021 resolution when we had our sort of special session that was really the regular session, but, you know, we're not going to get into that. But it was not in any from 2020, 2018, 2015, 2014, 2013, many other specials. I have struggled to find it. There have been one or two a long time ago where this language is included, but our special sessions are normally very narrowly focused on issues that we as a body decide we're going to consider and not completely open-ended to where the governor decides. And I would just also note that I believe the House leadership has said that if this amendment comes back over, they're going to acquiesce to it. So I don't think we're buying us another 2 hours in Richmond or anything by voting for this. So I would hope we would adopt the amendment.
Chair recognizes the senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Madam Chairman, would the gentleman yield for a question?
Will the gentleman from Eastern Fairfax County yield?
I'll yield.
The senator yields. Senator Newman has the floor.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, thank you. I would ask the gentleman, when looking at lines 13 and 14, and we have done it and we have not done it, is there any reason why to take it out this time? In other words, is there something that is pressing that would lead us to take this out this particular time?
Senator Somerville has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, I think, first of all, in terms of the integrity, Madam President, thank you. In terms of the integrity of the body, first of all, it's up to us to decide what we want to consider in special sessions, not the governor. And I think that's been the prerogative of our chambers forever. And I think it's important that we protect that prerogative, not only for this session, but in the future. And so I think to the extent we start slipping this in every single resolution, we have to argue about this every special session, depending on who the governor is and where things are. I just think that's a bad precedent to set for the body. I would say in terms of this particular session, my understanding was when we carried this, or at least I believe the caucus's understanding when we created or agreed to go into this special, is that we were going to focus only on the budget and carried over bills. And then the typical things like judges, commending resolutions, et cetera, which we have normally in all of them. And so I think this language is basically an open invitation to make the special session about anything and everything that the governor feels like. And that's, to me, our caucus is a dangerous precedent. So that's what I would say.
Madam President, would the gentleman yield for additional question?
Will the gentleman yield?
I'll yield.
Senator Newman has the floor.
Madam Chairman, I would ask the gentleman, looking at little V5, What is anticipated? Maybe the gentleman from Hanover or others can help us with that. Is it anticipated that even though most of the appointments do come down in a general session, that this would allow the General Assembly to put forward nominees that have not been sent down yet, or how do you anticipate that 5 working?
Senator Somerville has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, first of all, we didn't talk about that in caucus specifically, and we haven't talked about it internally either, because that's the language in the proposed resolution. That's not new. The reason we had to include all these other things was because we had to reorder the Romanettes, and it was just easier to cut and paste that in rather than do a bunch of strikes and amendments. And so we haven't really talked about that.
Does the gentleman from Bedford have another question?
Yes, I do. One last question, if the gentleman would yield.
The gentleman again yield. Senator Newman has the floor.
Madam President, I would ask the gentleman, so the only impact of this is to not allow the governor to send down bills. That there is no other impact of any of the other in the addition section or insertion section of the floor amendment.
Well,
gentleman from Eastern Fairfax County has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me try and be precise. The Constitution says the governor can send down a bill whenever he wants to. So I don't think we can limit the governor's ability to send down a bill. We can limit our ability to hear it. So I think that's the technical difference here.
Got it. Thank you, Madam President.
Chair recognizes the senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Just to reiterate, we don't need
For what purpose does the senator rise?
To address the amendment.
The senator has the floor.
The eliminating the part where it says the governor consider bills the governor anytime, our Constitution says anytime that we're in session, the governor can send down bills. So having in there that whether you have it in or you don't have it in is almost like saying putting in this resolution Tuesday follows Monday. And whether we have it in there or not, it can happen. It's going to happen. And as a result, taking that out doesn't change one thing, and it's Article 5, Section 5 of the Constitution that allows the governor, anytime we're in session, let me repeat that, to send down a bill. So it doesn't matter whether we have it in or we don't have it in.
Madam President, the gentleman yield for a question.
Will the senior senator from Fairfax County yield?
Sure.
Senator Newman has the floor.
Madam Chairman, I'd ask the gentleman, so that gets to the nub of it that I'm trying to get to. The governor, though, as I understand it from the former senator, can send it down, but if we vote for this, we cannot or will not be able to take it up. Is that correct?
That is not
Senator
correct.
Saslaw.
That is not correct. He constitutionally can send that bill down whether we have it in or we take it out.
Senator Newman, further question.
Madam President, further question.
Further question, Senator Saslaw. The senator yields. Senator Newman has the floor.
It's been a long time and I'm rusty. Let me just make sure I understand. He can send a bill down and we can, even if we pass the floor substitute, take it up. It'll be before us and we can consider it at that point. Is that correct, sir?
Senator Saslaw.
If he sends down a new bill,
okay.
Not amending a bill, if he sends a new bill, it goes to committee and comes out. We're not a committee unless we vote it to discharge the committee and go into a committee as a whole.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam President.
Chair recognizes Senator McDougal, the gentleman from Hanover.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, speaking to the amendment.
The senator has the floor.
Madam President, we had one member of the Senate articulate one version and another member of the Senate articulated different. I think this is very clear. When Reagan and I were riding around to events over the weekend, and she'll ask me, Diddy, what does that mean? Well, what this means is that there'll be no vote in the Senate on suspending the gas tax. That's what this is about. This is about whether people in Virginia are going to have to continue to pay more for gas in the upcoming months. Madam President, we might have different views on that. Might not be able to pass the Senate, but this would prevent the governor not from sending down the bill, but the Senate from taking up the bill and having a vote and the ayes and yays being cast on that bill. Madam President, I'm going to be against this. My constituents ask that you be against it, and I hope your vote will be no.
question is,
Madam President.
Chair recognizes the senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Madam President, I was confused before and I am confused today, right now. The question is, I guess, to the senator from Eastern Fairfax, is he right? In other words, can the Senate, if the gentleman would yield for a question.
Will the gentleman from Eastern Fairfax County rise for a question?
I yield.
Senator Newman has the floor.
Madam President, I'm going to ask the question so clear I hope it cannot be misunderstood. And that is, if we pass your floor amendment, will the Senate be able to take up the measure that was brought up by the senator from Hanover or not if it was sent down by the governor?
Senator Starrville has the floor.
Madam President, what I would say is a couple things. First of all, the governor has indicated he might do something. I don't know if he will or not. What he said he might do is something that could easily be dealt with in the budget as opposed to a separate bill. So to me, that issue is a red herring. But what I would say with regard to the in terms of process, this language has not been in any except for the last resolution from the special session last year. I've been unable to locate this language in any joint procedure resolution for a special session going back, I think, until 1994. Okay? I'm aware of what he's asking me. And so I would just point out, first of all, that we don't do this, number one. Number two, I would also just note that from my perspective, anybody can file anything they like, right? And the Constitution says the governor can file a bill. We have filing limits in this body. We can file, say, 28 bills. But they would be out of order if they were filed in excess of the joint procedure resolution we adopted. And if they were brought up in committee, somebody could raise an objection to the bill and say it's outside the scope of the procedure resolution or outside the scope of our rules. And so if we have a joint procedure resolution that says this is what we're going to consider this special, then I think there's an opportunity to make an objection should a bill come up in committee, that it's out of order. And so from my perspective, the governor we agree that he can send down anything he wants at any point in time. But as to whether or not that's in order or not, I think that would be up, if the bill gets called up and docketed, it would be up to the prerogative of the chairman as to whether it's in order or not. Or if it got to the floor, it would be up to the prerogative of Madam President. And that's the way I would answer it, the senator.
Madam President.
Chair recognizes the senator from Bedford.
Further question. The gentleman yield.
Will the gentleman from Eastern Fairfax County yield?
I'll yield.
The senator from Bedford has the floor.
Madam President, in the past, I was under the impression that we could only take up what was in the procedural resolution. Now that we have stricken on line 14, little I2, old little I2, and it has not been replaced in, it is no longer available for us to consider because it's not part of the procedural resolution. Is that correct?
Senator Starrville has the floor.
Madam President, I can only say it the way I keep saying it, okay, which is that if the governor chooses to send down a bill, a committee chairman, the clerk would then refer it to a committee potentially, and then a committee would have to decide whether to docket it. Should a committee docket it, somebody can make an objection that it's out of order because it's outside the scope, and then it would be gone. That's how I think the process would work. So, do you call that considering it or not? I'm sorry to give you a lawyerly answer, but that's from my perspective, the lawyer answer.
Madam President.
Senator Newman.
Just speaking briefly to the resolution.
The senator may continue.
I appreciate the gentleman's response. I think what I'm hearing is if we don't have it in the procedural resolution, you can't do it. And that's the way I've always known it to be. And I think I don't know what the intent is, but I think it's very clear that the impact of this is we will not consider bills the governor sends down. That may be okay, but it would seem to me that we would get a very clear answer here on the floor is whether or not an item of a certain type can be considered during the special session. And I don't know how we get to that. I don't know if we ask a parliamentary inquiry or we're getting a little bit of a shades of gray here, and I'm just not sure how we get the final answer before we vote on a floor amendment that will have a big impact on whether or not we can do a certain thing. So, Madam President, I'm going to try. I'm going to ask you, parliamentary inquiry is whether or not the exclusion of little I2 means that items that are sent down for the governor will be ruled out of order.
While the chair considers it, the Senate will be temporarily at ease. I will now read Article 5, Section 5 of the Virginia Constitution, legislative responsibilities of the governor. The governor shall communicate to the General Assembly at every regular session the condition of the Commonwealth, recommend to its consideration such measures as he may deem expedient, and convene the General Assembly on application of 2/3 of the members elected to each house thereof, or when, in his opinion, the interest of the Commonwealth may require.
Madam President.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Madam President, I withdraw the request. I think there's a amicable agreement, so thank you, but I withdraw the request.
Madam President.
Chair recognizes the senator from Eastern Fairfax County.
I would move to withdraw the floor amendment.
The motion is withdrawn. Chair recognizes the senior senator from Fairfax County, Senator Saslaw.
Senator Locke. Oh, does he wish to speak?
No. Chair now recognizes the senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, I move that we agree to House Joint Resolution 6001 and speaking to that resolution.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. House Joint Resolution 6001 establishes a schedule for the conduct of business coming before the special session. Again, I move its passage.
The question is, shall the resolution be agreed to? All those in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, no 0.
Ayes 37, no 0. The resolution is agreed to. The senator from Hampton, Senator Locke, will now inform the House of Delegates of the action of the Senate. The Senate will temporarily stand at ease.
Less than 24 hours after his speech, Dr. King was dead. Today, as chair of the Virginia Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Commission, I join the world in not just commemorating his death, but in celebrating his life and legacy. We must connect Dr. King's legacy to our work today. This afternoon, as it does every year, the National Civil Rights Museum will commemorate Dr. King's life and legacy on the spot where he last stood on what was the balcony of room 306 of the Lorraine Motel. On this 54th anniversary, they will honor him by addressing the perpetual question, which he spent the final year of his life pondering: where do we go from here? That was the title of his final book and a speech he gave 9 months before his death at the 11th Annual Southern Christian Leadership Conference in Atlanta. One of the central themes was hope. Reflecting upon the civil rights movement, Dr. King discussed the question of what African Americans should do with the new freedoms found in such laws as the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. He concluded that all Americans must unite in order to fight poverty and create an equality of opportunity. He reiterated his philosophy of nonviolent social change and the power of love over hate, saying that he still stood by nonviolence as the most potent weapon available in the struggle for justice in this country, because darkness cannot put out darkness. Only light can do that. This year, the question of where do we go from here seems more difficult to answer than ever before in my lifetime. Hope at times feels hard to hold on to. The hate that Dr. King saw has not gone away. It alternates between festering below the surface and bursting forth in the open. The tensions have only been heightened during the global pandemic. The past 2 years have been marked by fatigue, anxiety, grief, and anger, which sometimes, frankly, threatens to overwhelm the progress that we have made. And while we have made great strides in addressing racial injustice and inequity, we are now facing the same backlash to that progress that my great-grandparents' generation faced in response to the political, social, and economic gains they made and that formerly enslaved Americans made during Reconstruction. That same backlash that Dr. King and my parents' generation faced in response to Brown versus Board of Education, the Civil Rights Act, and the Voting Rights Act. And as more and more of those who endured Jim Crow are dying, we face a backlash to teaching their experiences to our children. We see the labeling of efforts to redress the impact of slavery and Jim Crow as inherently divisive concepts or critical race theory. But to answer the question, where do we go from here, we have to fully acknowledge and understand how our past brought us here, which can only be done by teaching a full, accurate, and complete history, the good, the bad, and the ugly, even when, and I would say especially when, it is uncomfortable. More than a year after the insurrection at the Capitol, our rifts have not been bridged, and there are those who seek to undermine the very democracy we live in, while those in the Ukraine are willing to give their lives to maintain their own. As we are on the verge of confirming Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson as the first African-American woman to the U.S. Supreme Court, my heart is broken over some of the vitriolic rhetoric I've heard against her. Families are grieving loved ones that they've lost to the pandemic and to gun violence. Where do we find the momentum to move forward and the energy to ask, where do we go from here, when at times it feels like we are barely treading water in the present? But we must continue to answer that question with a strong, demanding love, and with hard work to build and strengthen our communities. As we reflect on the life and legacy of Dr. King, we must hold on to his unshakable faith, as outlined in his final speech, that whatever challenges we face, we will achieve peace and justice in our future if we continue to strive for it together. I've been to the mountaintop, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land, she said. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know that we as a people will get to the promised land. Dr. King's words, his faith in humanity, his hopes for the future, give us direction today as we continue to build our beloved community. But as John Lewis reminded us in his final essay before he died, democracy is not a state. It is an act, and each generation must do its part to help build what we call the beloved community, a nation and a world society at peace with itself. As we remember Dr. King today, let us commit to picking up the mantle and doing our part to build the beloved community together. Let us remain vigilant against this current backlash and those yet to come. Let us commit together to achieving the promised land that Dr. King knew he would never reach, but he knew we would achieve it. Let's make sure that we see it together. And so, Madam President, I move that when we adjourn today, we do so in honor and memory of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King.
I thank the senator. The chair now recognizes the senior senator from Chesterfield, Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This past Saturday marked the start of the holy month of Ramadan. Ramadan is a month of fasting, of abstaining from food and drink from the hours of sunrise to sunset. So Muslims all across the world and all across this Commonwealth are presently engaged in this holy month of fasting. But more than just fasting, Ramadan is a significant part of the purpose of Islam, and that is to ensure that all who are within the community are taken care of. So during the holy month of Ramadan, it is incumbent upon Muslims to ensure that the hungry are fed, that those who are suffering are taken care of, and that peace and messages of love are shared around the world. To the more than 200,000 Muslims who live in the Commonwealth, who participate every day in our lives, whether it's in healthcare professions, as educators, as small business owners, as individuals in every part of our community, to all of these individuals, I wish a very happy and safe Ramadan, Ramadan Mubarak.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Lynchburg, Senator Peake.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise for a brief point of personal privilege.
The senator may say on.
Thank you. And members of the body, as we approach this week, there will be a vote in the United States Senate on a historic Supreme Court justice nominee. And I suspect she will be approved and take a seat on the United States Supreme Court. But when people complain about this brief hearing process that she has gone through, I would ask every member of this body to think back decades to what happened to Robert Bork, who was the first real Supreme Court nominee to be absolutely trashed by the opposing party. To think about Clarence Thomas and the historic nature of his nomination to the United States Supreme Court and how he was treated by the opposing party. And recently, with Brett Kavanaugh and the circus that was conducted in the United States Senate and the way he was attacked and his family was attacked by witnesses who could not back up, even with dates or years or locations, the most horrific allegations against him. I would ask you to think about those recent Supreme Court nominees. Thank you, Madam President.
The clerk will now report any announcements on the desk.
We do not have any, Madam President.
The chair recognizes the senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn pursuant to HJR 6001 until convened with at least 48 hours notice by the call of the chair of the Senate Committee on Rules. And Madam President, I also move that when we adjourn, we do so in honor and memory of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. III, the General Major for Justice.
The question is, shall the Senate adjourn pursuant to HJR 6001 until reconvened with at least 48 hours notice by the call of the chair of the Senate Committee on Rules, and also adjourn in memory of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The Senate stands adjourned.